Hello and welcome to another video. And in today's video I will be updating my Knight Thunderstruck on crit build. I made one from, I think it was about 8 months ago. And I will be showing what has changed and how much more powerful it has gotten with all the new additions to 1.0 launch. And why should you play this character? First of all, it has everything that you want in a build, in my opinion at least. It's very fast, it has a lot of clear speed, it has single target, it's very flashy and godlike feel to it, and very, very tanky, as long as you spin to win on enemies, as you saw in the gameplay preview. And let me just say, right off the bat, you do not know what dopamine is until you play this character. Let me just put it like that. And another thing is, my character is not very min-maxed compared to what you can do with the new nether items. As you can see right here, I don't have any nether items equipped at all. I do have a full set of legendaries, and there's a reason for that, which I will show you later in the video. But let's go over the build and how it works. And just a disclaimer, this video is going to be a bit longer, so I will put in chapters so it's easier to navigate through the video, especially if you are an experienced player and just want to know, let's say, what gear I use. You can just skip to that if you want to, as an example. So let's start out with the Reaper. The Reaper itself that I'm using is the Thunder Primordial Sword, just like in the previous build guide. This Reaper in particular is one of my favorites of all time because it has so many different aspects that makes this game great. It has a defensive layer, which is lightning resistance. You become pretty much immune to lightning. It gives you increased damage. It gives you speed. It gives you utility to increase your primary or secondary abilities. I don't do that on this character. We don't need it. It has a line that says cooldown. The cooldown of your skills is reduced by 2% every time you walk 1 yard. That 1 yard cooldown is crazy good with an interaction that I'm abusing. And on top of that, the primordial version gives you the ability to cast Thunderstruck on crit, and that works on everything. So we want as many hits as possible, and we do that with a few things. So let's go over everything in this video. That's a lot to talk about. Let me just say that. So I just want to show the Reaper, why it's good, and show what the interaction is with the Reaper and, let's say, the Ultimatum right here. The Primordial Malediction says that you can no longer deal critical damage, but we remove that negative effect by taking the Flawless Power Ultimatum, which grants you a crit damage multiplier of 280. So it simply just overrides it by doing so. As you can see right here, our crit damage is 280 when we have it on, and if we remove it, it gets down to 0. So the Ultimatum actually overrides the Primordial Malediction on this Reaper, which is such a cool mechanic in the game. And there's tons more of these things in the game. It's just so crazy. I love it. Next thing is the runes. I use the Rune of Inner Fireworks, and the reason for that is because we are using a mechanic called Inner Fires. And Inner Fires is small balls that you can spawn through hitting targets with melee hits. And these balls can deal quite a lot of damage if you invest into that, but we don't use the Inner Fires for their damage, if that makes sense. It has a raw damage scaling, but we don't use that. We use it to hit enemies to actually get a lot of clear speed. So as you can see in the video, I have tons of balls spiraling around me, and those balls are just there to crit enemies and then trigger another mechanic, which is inner fireworks. And inner fireworks also explodes, and that explosion can then trigger the Thunderstruck on crit, as well as the inner fires itself. So you get a lot of clear speed through that, and just deal insane amount of damage. And the one we use is this one, where we can activate it when we want. And another great thing about this is a cooldown mechanic. And as I said before, the cooldown of your skills is reduced by 2% for every time you walk 1 yard, and that works on this. So when it's off, like on cooldown, it only takes like 5 seconds before you get it up and running again, which is so awesome. So the rune we have almost, I would say 95% uptime on, which is insane. You usually cannot do that on other builds, but on this character we can do that. And then we take the rune of Hagen that just increases the effect of the rune. It doesn't matter that the constraint gets higher because the cooldown reduces like the total amount of the cooldown. So let's say the cooldown is 100 seconds and you reduce the 2% of that cooldown, is always going to be 2 seconds that you take off every yard you run. So, and we run a lot of yards, as you can see. It's a very fast character, and you move even faster when you proc crits and so on. I mean, ancestral crits. So, these mechanics are very powerful, and you can also, if you want to, you can always take this one right here. This is a single target setup if you want to do that. So this rune of the Slormancer makes your Ultimatum even more powerful, and you can increase that with this Hagen effect right here. So if you get this up to a max level plus this one at a max level, I'm pretty sure you can get it up to 800% crit damage if you want to go single target compared to clear speed. I think this is still more fun, and you don't need the single target unless you want to push your character in what is it called, Battlefield Expedition at Rev 10 plus 100 or whatever. It's not necessary. You don't get any more rewards from that, but it's just so you know that you can actually make a single target setup. Okay, so let's go over the skills. I take the Enduring Protector. There's a great reason for that. It's such a feels good specialization, but it doesn't provide that many great options either, because 3 of them are actually just traveling nodes, if you can say that. So the first one we pick is Stamina, just for a bit of life regeneration. You could also take the Armor if you want to. We take 20% increased life, very nice. We take Steady Arm. This makes you able to immediately get 15 block after you blocked. And this pairs really well with Crest Shield. And Crest Shield is just there to give us a passive buff, which is granting us 15 block at all time, as well as granting us 1 block every second. This is just a passive thing, which is great to have. This is great on every knight build, in my opinion, if you want to do that on your own build. But yeah, this one paired with the Crest Shield makes you able to have a minimum of 30 block stacks at all times. But there's some other mechanic to it where you can get even more block stacks very fast. I'll show that in a bit. The next 3 points we take in Enduring Protector is pretty irrelevant in my opinion. They don't do that much, especially. I mean, this can be alright, but at some point you're just going to kill the enemy anyway, and it doesn't work on bosses, I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure about that. The next one is going to be Honary Sigil of Boldness. This is just for the increased damage and the increased damage to elites. Otherwise, the other stats are pretty irrelevant. If you want to become an absolute god and never die at all, I mean, I usually don't die on this character, but you could take this one, so when you block attacks, you reduce it by 100%, so you become immune for a hit. And then the powerful node in the Enduring Protector is definitely Elder Armor. This just doubles the stats on your body armor. But the only thing it doesn't double is the unique effects, the affinities, and the attribute stats. So it's all the common, magic, rare, and epic stats that gets doubled. But that's still a very powerful mechanic if you ask me. Especially if you have pure modifiers. I don't have that many, but let's say if the elemental damage on this was a pure modifier, you could suddenly get like close to 10,000 flat elemental damage, which is pretty nuts if you ask me. Currently it's only granting me 4.4 thousand. And only that's still a lot of flat damage. Our main ability is going to be Whirlwind. We have a few things that are relevant here. The first thing doesn't really matter. It makes your main attack deal a bit more damage equal to your movement speed. We don't really use that. We only use it to deal crits. The next thing is Repelling Tornado. This is very great. This makes us able to gain loads and loads of block stacks very quickly again, as long as you deal crit damage on enemies. This is only with Whirlwind, so it's not from, let's say, the Inner Fires and other things. But this node is very powerful. The next nodes are going to be Arcane Beam. This is just to throw out a few hitting things that can then trigger Thunderstruck, which is more damage. We take Dancing Blades. This is again just to trigger Thunderstruck on crit. And the last one, I just took the Skewer thing. You don't have to do that. Honestly, the most important thing is Repelling Tornado, because it grants you so much more defensive layers. And I can say, if you're new into this character, I could recommend Irremovable. This makes you able to get a lot of tenacity, and tenacity is a very great stat in this game. If you have 100% of tenacity, you cannot get frozen, you cannot be stunned, you cannot be chilled, cannot be slowed. Very powerful. The only thing that it doesn't provide immunity to is slippery ground, or whatever it's called, ice ground, whatever. You know what I mean. So that's about the skills. The skills are pretty simple. That's probably the most simple thing about this character, in my opinion. Let's go over the attributes. We invest 100% into the bravery stat, and the reason for that is not only for the movement speed, but it's also for this last node right here in bravery at 75. It makes you able to get 10% increased damage for every legendary equipment you are wearing. And this is why we are going full all in on the legendary mechanics here. So we have a total of 11 legendary equipments, and that means 110% increased damage. I will just say the damage here is just additive. So, for example, the weapon grants you 161%, so the 110 gets added on top of that, so it's going to be 270% elemental damage. The next thing we invest into is Seal. Seal grants us a defensive mechanic, which is going to be whenever you deal ancestral strike damage, you gain 5% of your maximum life. This is pretty much our sustain, as well as another mechanic in the game. that I will show you later. So this is pretty much the important thing about it, because we want something that can actually sustain our character very well. Because Life Leech doesn't work great on this character because it's only going to be from like my main skill, Whirlwind, because it doesn't affect. I mean, Life Leech doesn't affect indirect damage, just like Inner Fires, Thunderstruck, and so on. It also provides a few other things. For example, it grants a bit more Ancestral Strike chance, which is great. But other than that, it's just minor buffs. And Fury, we go into that for the crit chance. 10% is great. Most characters probably take this if they have the points for it. And then the last 3 points is just to willpower, because it gives a tiny bit of increased damage. You can pick whatever you like if you don't want the 3%ers. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, Ancestral Tree. This is one of the cool things that I discovered. So we take Flashing Darts. This is traveling. We take Inner Radiance. This is traveling. But here comes the juicy parts of the character. Elemental Spirit grants you 15% increased elemental damage when you deal Ancestral Strike damage. This stacks up to 3 times, but there's a twist to it. One last round makes passive and negative effects on enemies stack multiple times and can stack 3 additional times. This is a buff, so that can stack. So this buff right here actually grants 6 stacks instead of 3 stacks. So instead of giving 45% increased damage, it's going to be 90%, which is pretty powerful. And I'm not done here. The next thing is going to be Karul's power plant, or Ruse. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. This is our main damage dealer for a single target. Your Ancestral Strike create a lightning rod nearby. This makes you able to place a totem-like thing that then shoots out tendrils to your character, and you can spawn unlimited amounts of these. When you have a lot of these out on a single target, it hits like, I don't know, 50, 100 times per second. And that just means you are dealing insane amount of single target with this one right here. I might have, like, let's say a low amount of hit damage compared to other builds, but if you have a 5 million hit happen 50 times in a second, that's a lot of damage. Let me just tell you that. So this one is very, very powerful. Next one is Cleansing Surge. This is another thing that is great with this one here, the one last round. It makes you able to get 10% movement speed when you deal Ancestral Strike damage up to 5 times, but we make that into 8 times. So that actually means it's going to be 80% movement speed compared to the 50% it grants. That's very powerful. This is a very interesting one, I would say. It grants a lot of power to certain mechanics in the game. Next is just for traveling, Elemental Wizard. It grants a tiny bit of flat elemental, but the big deal here is this one. Consistency is key. This makes us able to deal way more damage with Thunderstruck, which we have equipped at max rank because of our Reaper. I actually forgot to mention that. But this means that when you have this aura turned on, instead of going from like 1 flat damage to the big amount here, it's going to be 400,000 to 500,000. That's a big deal. So if I take it off, you can see that my consistent damage is pretty much gone. So you can deal very, very small hits if you do not have this aura on. I think it's close to... It's probably a 60% damage increase or something. Probably more. I'm not sure how much it is. I'm not a big math man. But yeah. this is a very important node in the tree. So let's go over the gear. The gear is there's so much to talk about, and there's so many stats that you want to look out for. And I'm gonna take this sort of slowly and try to explain why I take these different mechanics. I will start out with the Amulet, just because it has a very powerful stat modifier, in my opinion. So the Amulet that I'm using is whenever you block, you restore a percentage of your life. We block a lot of times in this game. So every time you get hit for like 5% of your life, you pretty much don't get hit at all because you just restored instantaneously when you block. This is it might not look that great, but it's very powerful. If you know Path of Exile, where you can get life on block, percentage life on block, you know how powerful this can actually be. It's pretty much the same thing, just more busted in my opinion. It gives so much more life compared to what it does in Path of Exile. So that's the amulet. The chest is going to be very simple. I already showed you this earlier. We take the Inner Sanctum of Astorius. This makes us able to get more Inner Fire max charges. This is very important because we want to get as many as possible to increase our overall area of effect on the character. Next one is Shroud of the Unseen. Shroud of the Unseen is a very powerful mechanic in my opinion. In the beginning when I saw this, I thought it was just increased evasion rating, but it's actually just a flat amount of chance to avoid attacks. And you get more stacks every second, but you also get stacks every time you crit and deal Ancestral Strike damage. So when you're at 100% stacks, you can avoid every single hit in the game once, which is pretty powerful. And when you pair that with the block mechanic, you suddenly become unkillable at some point. There's some exceptions, but we manage those with this legendary right here. Soul is Pact. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it. This is the single best defensive like item in the game, like legendary effect. I don't think anything comes close to it. It's so insanely powerful. I thought it was not that great when I saw it in the beginning because it was a higher number when you take damage, but now when you level it up, it gets to a lower point of your maximum life, which is insane. So what it says, when you deal damage exceeding 5% of your life is staggered. And staggered means that instead of taking the damage instantly, you take it over 10 seconds instead. And when you get that, let's say you get dealt 100,000 damage in a single hit. That doesn't matter because the 100,000 damage is going to be dealt over 10 seconds. So you get like a degen of 10,000 damage per second. But you can mitigate that through this other legendary effect, Sharusel's Pact. I don't know. Laugh at me. I don't care. And this build makes you able to remove it, like that big degen that you suddenly got from the 100,000 hit damage, as an example, when you deal Ancestral Strike damage. Because whenever you deal Ancestral Strike damage, staggered damage is removed. So these two together is insane. This is probably the best combo in the game, in my opinion. If you have loads and loads of recovery, which this build does have when you hit enemies, as well as just, let's say, a build that invests into a lot of life recovery, I don't think you can die. It's kind of nuts. Let me say that. I'm pretty sure that every single character wants these two legendaries together. if they are using Ancestral Strike damage. I'm just putting that out there. So yeah, great combo, highly recommended. The ring that I'm using is Gas Lucas Conquest, and this grants us more stacks of max inner fire charges when we Ancestral Strike enemies, and this stacks up to 16 times, but because of one last round, it actually goes up to 19. So this is also a stack modifier, so you can stack this up to more than it says. Very powerful mechanic. The other ring is just going to be Ancestral Champions present. I'm not sure which one it is. This just boosts nothing on this character. You can actually choose another one if you want to. I don't think I have an Ancestral Gift. I do. I have Elemental Wizard, but it grants such a tiny bit of damage that it's irrelevant, in my opinion. So if you have another ring that you want to use, you can do that. The gloves, muscling gloves. This legendary effect is great because it grants you a critical strike chance multiplier through your chance to Ancestral Strike enemies. I currently have 47% Ancestral Strike chance, so I suddenly get, I'm pretty sure it's close to 100% without anything. I'm pretty sure at least. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm very close to 100% crit chance with these gloves on, which is pretty powerful. And as I said before, I don't have any pure stats on my gear, so this just means it's open for a lot of great modifiers still. Another very powerful piece of gear is this one. It's very simple. Fury of Neria? I'm not sure how you pronounce that either. I'm sorry. But this just grants you elemental damage multiplier, which is pretty powerful. It's just a very simple stat, but very powerful. 22% is nothing to sneeze at. And this is not an additive, this is a multiplier. So, for example, the weapon grants increased modifier of 160. This one is going to be multiplying that number of damage. So, pretty good. Vortex of Astorias. This one makes your inner fire's duration last way longer. When you have this on, the inner fires last quite a long time. Let me just say that. If I look at my base value, it's going to be 7 seconds, but this one adds an additional 10 seconds duration to the inner fires, and that means when we take it off, we suddenly only have a duration of 12 seconds. And that's a big deal, because you want the inner fires to stay up at all times, especially in, let's say, just normal expeditions. It's great to have it up and running, because if you don't have this legendary effect, they fall off quite easily and very quickly, and that feels kind of bad, and it makes inner fires irrelevant, if you ask me, because you want them to stay up and actually help you clear packs very quickly. So that's a powerful mechanic that right there. This is also new. A lot of these are actually new, which is great. Okay, and next thing, the Visage of Relentless Transference. This is probably the best damage increaser that you can get on gear. So what it does is whenever you deal Ancestral Strike damage, you gain a transference stack for the next 5 seconds, up to 19 stacks. And because it's a stackable buff, you can get another buff out of this one last round. So instead of saying 19 stacks, you can get up to 22 stacks. And when you get it to level 15, it's going to be 23, which is the maximum. And that essentially means right now it's going to grant me 110% increased damage with indirect damage. And this build is purely indirect damage. So this is a big win. You cannot really do better when it comes to damage output with this one. So the helmet is very, very important if you want to do a lot of damage. You cannot see it in your tooltip, but it does work after what I've seen. I think if I take this off, I lose like over 50% of my damage, which is quite a big deal. Okay, so the next thing, this is just a simple thing that I want to show. It's going to be the taps. Just show my stats on my character. I have 50,000 life. I have a bit of life regen, nothing too crazy. Next stats is tab 2. I see my movement speed is quite high. I have a bit of cooldown, it's not that important. I have almost 100% chance. I have a stacking buff that grants me increased, so this is not the true crit chance that I have right now. The Ancestral Strike chance is quite high as well, 47. You can push this even further with Nether Gear or pure stats, is what I meant. I do invest a bit into elemental penetration. It's not as important when you get very high hit damage, but you can do that if you want to. Let me see. There's another important stat. Yeah, if you can get more damage to elites, that would also be pretty awesome, because it's pretty powerful. Actually, a very important modifier is going to be shadow resistance, as I said before. Just because it's probably the most dangerous of the elements, because it turns off your recovery. And the next best thing is going to be fire resistance. If you can get that as well, that would be pretty good. And this is just my next tab, as you can see right here. Okay, so one of the last things I do want to go over is potential weaknesses of the character. I think that's pretty important to state when it comes to builds. The potential weakness of this character is that it does not have any self-sustain in life recovery. As you can see, my life recovery is this that I have right now. You can see it's regenning right now. That's all I have passively. But we have this one to sustain our life. We have the Amulet to sustain our life when we block. And that is pretty much enough to make us nearly unkillable. Another thing is that you have to stay close to bosses to deal loads of single target. But it doesn't really matter that much. We rarely die, let me say that. And the biggest downside is that after you play this character, you probably won't be playing anything else because it's so much fun to play. I'm just kidding, of course, but it's my favorite build without a doubt. I've been playing this character for over a year now, I think, and then it's just gotten better and better and better over the years, and it's just such a fun build to play. Let me just say that. And yeah, and let me go over why I haven't been uploading in the past few. It's almost 2 weeks now. First of all, I had to level up a new character, which was this one. Second of all, the last 5 days I've been away. I have been to Belgium, and it was just a tour with my education, so that was pretty fun. But I gotta be honest, I would rather be playing Slormancer, because I am very much into it right now. It's a very, very good game. And it seems like the developers are also going to invest a lot more time into it, as it looks like that right now. And the player base exceeded their expectation. Like, there's a lot more player retention compared to what they expected. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully it was also inspiring. And yeah, hopefully it helped you understand it. If there was anything you're curious about or doesn't understand, just let me know. I will probably find an answer to it. I've been answering a lot of questions while I've been away still, but it's been a bit harder to answer them because I don't have the game at hand. It's a bit easier to answer questions when I actually have the game to guide me through the questions as well, if that makes sense. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I will see you in the next video, because I don't know. I think I have a pretty cool build building up right now. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.